Captain Lee Dong-wook stood on the bridge of the UES Taeguk and watched the stars through the wide viewing window. His ship was humanity's pride, the most advanced vessel ever built by human hands. The year was 2387, and mankind had finally reached beyond their home solar system. After decades of preparation, they had established their first colony on a distant world they called New Sol. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and life support systems. Dr. Park So-min sat at her science station, studying readings from the long-range sensors. Commander Kim Tae-hyun reviewed tactical reports while engineer Choi Min-ho monitored the ship's advanced engines. Ambassador Yoon Na-ri was in her quarters, preparing reports for Earth about their successful colony mission. Lee had served in space for 15 years, but this mission felt different. They were no longer exploring their own neighborhood. They were true pioneers now, pushing into the vast unknown of interstellar space. The Taeguk was conducting routine surveys near the edge of human territory when the sensors detected something that changed everything. "Captain," Dr. Park called out, her voice tight with concern. "I'm reading massive energy signatures approaching our position." Lee moved to her station and looked at the display. The readings showed objects moving at incredible speed toward their location. Whatever was coming was big, very big. "How many contacts?" Lee asked. 50. No, wait. More are appearing. 100. 200. Dr. Park's voice trailed off as more signals filled her screen. "Captain, there are over 500 ships heading straight for us." Commander Kim moved quickly to his weapons console. "Should I raise shields and charge weapons?" Lee considered this carefully. If these were hostile aliens, his single ship would not survive against such numbers. If they were peaceful, raising weapons might be seen as aggressive. "Not yet. Let's see what they want first." The alien fleet arrived with terrifying efficiency. Massive ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation around the Taeguk. Each vessel was at least twice the size of the human ship, with dark hulls covered in what looked like armor plating. Strange symbols glowed along their sides. "They're scanning us," Dr. Park reported. "Very thorough scans. They're learning everything about our ship's design and capabilities." A communication signal came through the ship's speakers. The voice was harsh and mechanical, speaking through a translation device. "Attention, primitive vessel. You will prepare for boarding. Resistance will result in immediate destruction." Lee exchanged glances with his crew. This was first contact with an alien species, but it was not going as anyone had hoped. "Open a channel," he ordered. The main screen activated, showing a creature that made several crew members step backward. The alien stood 8 feet tall with a body covered in natural armor that looked like black chitin. Multiple eyes glowed red on its elongated head. 4 arms ended in clawed hands. It was clearly built for war. "I am Admiral Ketvar of the Vorthak Dominion," the creature announced. "You are now property of the Empire. Your species will surrender unconditionally and accept subjugation. This is standard protocol." Lee felt his heart racing, but kept his voice steady. "I am Captain Lee Dong-wook of the United Earthship Taeguk. We represent humanity. What exactly do you mean by subjugation?" The alien tilted its head as if confused by the question. "You will serve the Empire. Your worlds will provide resources and labor. Your military will be disbanded. Your leaders will be replaced by Vorthak administrators. All species serve the Empire." "And if we refuse?" Commander Kim asked. Admiral Ketvar made a sound that might have been laughter. "Refusal is not possible. In 3,000 years, the Vorthak Dominion has conquered 847 star systems. No species has ever successfully resisted. Most surrender immediately upon witnessing our power. The few that attempt resistance are quickly eliminated." Dr. Park was quietly recording everything while studying the alien's behavior and technology. She noticed something interesting in how the Admiral spoke. There was confidence, yes, but also a strange lack of understanding about resistance itself. "You said most surrender immediately," Lee observed. "What about the others?" "They flee too. The edges of the galaxy or are destroyed," Ketvar replied dismissively. It makes no difference. The Empire always expands, always conquers. It is the natural order. Ambassador Yoon had arrived on the bridge during the conversation. She stepped forward with diplomatic training taking over. Admiral, surely we can discuss terms? Perhaps some form of alliance or trade agreement? The alien's multiple eyes focused on her with what seemed like genuine puzzlement. You do not understand. There are no negotiations, no alliances, only submission or death. These are the only options the Empire offers. Lee made a decision that would change galactic history. We'll need to discuss this with our people first. The bridge fell silent. Even his own crew stared at him in shock. Admiral Ketvar stood completely still for several long moments as if his brain could not process what he had just heard. Discuss? The alien finally said. No species has ever requested time to discuss conquest. You will surrender now or die now. These are your choices. Nevertheless, Lee said calmly, we need time to consult with our government and our people. This is how humanity makes important decisions. Dr. Park watched the alien's reaction carefully. Ketvar seemed genuinely confused, even disturbed by this response. His species clearly had no experience with anything like this. Very well, the Admiral said slowly. You have 72 hours to accept the inevitable. When this time passes, you will surrender or be destroyed. Do not attempt to flee. Our ships are faster than yours. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Are you insane? Commander Kim whispered. We can't fight that fleet. We're not going to fight them, Lee replied. Not yet anyway. Choi, can you get a message to Earth? Engineer Choi. Minho nodded. Yes, sir. Quantum communication array is ready. Send everything we've recorded to Earth Command. Include all sensor data about their ships and weapons. Tell them we have 72 hours before things get very bad out here. Dr. Rayao. Park looked up from her console. Captain, I've been analyzing their behavior and language patterns. I think they're telling the truth about their history. They really have conquered hundreds of worlds without serious resistance. What makes you think that? Yoon asked. The Admiral seemed genuinely confused by our request for time. He had no protocols for dealing with delay or negotiation. In his mind, species either run away immediately or surrender immediately. The concept of wanting to discuss options was completely foreign to him. Lee nodded thoughtfully. That might be useful information. What else can you tell me about them? Their technology is definitely advanced, but it seems standardized. All their ships look identical. Their formation flying is perfect, almost like they share one mind. There's no individual variation in their behavior. Engineer Choi spoke up from his station. Sir, I'm getting readings on their weapons and shields. They're powerful, but the technology seems old, like it hasn't changed in a very long time. Interesting, Lee mused. Commander Kim, what's your assessment of their tactical approach? Kim studied the enemy formation on his screens. They're arranged for maximum intimidation and overwhelming firepower, but it's very rigid. No flexibility or adaptation. They seem to expect quick surrender, not actual combat. Over the next several hours, the crew of the Teguk worked frantically to learn everything they could about their captors. The Vorthak ships maintained their positions but made no aggressive moves. It was as if they were waiting patiently for the humans to come to their senses and surrender. Dr. Park made several attempts to communicate with other Vorthak ships, hoping to learn more about their culture and motivations. The responses were always identical, as if spoken by the same mind. They spoke of the Empire's glorious history, the benefits of submission, and the futility of resistance. As the deadline approached, tension on the bridge grew thick. Earth had not responded to their messages. The crew knew they were likely on their own against impossible odds. Captain, Choi announced suddenly, I'm detecting massive energy signatures approaching. Lee felt his stomach drop. Had Earth sent reinforcements, or were more Vorthak ships arriving to ensure their destruction? The answer came as dozens of human ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a coordinated formation. At their head was the massive dreadnought Arirang, flagship of Earth's defense fleet. Admiral Ketvar's voice crackled over the communication system, and for the first time, he sounded uncertain. This is impossible. No species moves toward a Vorthak fleet. All species flee or surrender. Lee smiled grimly as he watched more human ships arrive. Admiral, I think it's time you learned something about humanity. We don't run from fights. We run toward them. Admiral Song Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Arirang and studied the alien fleet surrounding the Taeguk. 50 years old and weathered by decades of military service, Song had fought in the Mars Independence War and commanded Earth's defenses during the asteroid mining conflicts. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for this moment. The human fleet numbered 50 ships against the Vorthak's 500. Every tactical manual ever written would call this suicide. Yet here they were, having jumped directly into the heart of an alien armada that claimed to have conquered nearly 1,000 worlds. Sir, reported Communications Officer Bae Yun-jung, Captain Lee is requesting permission to come aboard for briefing. Granted, Song replied. And patch me through to the alien admiral. Let's see what these Vorthak are all about. General An Soo-jin, head of human military intelligence, stood beside Song's command chair reviewing the data packets Lee had transmitted. Her team had spent the 72-hour deadline analyzing every detail about Vorthak technology and behavior. Patterns, Admiral, she said quietly. Something doesn't add up about their conquest claims. Before Song could respond, the main screen activated. Admiral Ketvar appeared, his multiple red eyes glowing with what seemed like confusion and anger. Human fleet, the alien spoke through his translation device. You have made a grave error. No species in our 3,000-year history has ever moved toward our forces. Your primitive minds cannot comprehend the futility of resistance. Song stepped forward, his expression calm despite the circumstances. I am Admiral Song Ji-hoon of the Earth Defense Fleet. You claim to have conquered many worlds. We would like to hear about your military history. The alien's head tilted in that strange way Captain Lee had described. Military history? There is no history to discuss. Species surrender or die. This is the way of the Empire. Dr. Lim Jae-won, the fleet's chief scientist, had been listening carefully. He spoke up from his position at the science station. Admiral Ketvar, surely some species must have attempted to fight back. How did you defeat their military tactics? Tactics? The alien seemed genuinely puzzled by the question. Species do not use tactics against the Empire. They see our fleet and understand their position. Resistance is illogical when defeat is certain. General An exchanged a meaningful look with Admiral Song. She had suspected this, but hearing it confirmed was stunning. Admiral, she said to the alien, what was the longest military campaign in your history? Ketvar paused for a long moment. Campaign? The Empire does not conduct campaigns. We arrive. We demand surrender. Surrender is given. The longest resistance lasted 6 of your hours when the Zephyrian Collective attempted to hide their fleet in a nebula. And how did that resistance end? Dr. Lim pressed. They emerged and surrendered when they realized hiding was useless, Ketvar replied matter-of-factly. Song felt a chill run down his spine, but not from fear. It was the chill of understanding. General, he said quietly, are you thinking what I'm thinking? Yes, sir, An replied grimly. They've never actually fought a war. They've just been collecting surrenders for 3,000 years. Captain Lee arrived on the Arirang 30 minutes later, accompanied by Dr. Park and Commander Kim. The briefing room was packed with Earth's top military minds, all studying the data about humanity's first alien contact. The psychological profile is clear, Dr. Park explained to the assembled officers. The Vorthak operate on pure intimidation. Their entire strategy depends on species surrendering before any real fighting begins. Captain Lee nodded. Dr. Park is right. When I asked for time to discuss terms, Admiral Ketvar was completely confused. He had no protocol for dealing with delay or negotiation. Their ship formations support this theory, added Commander Kim. Perfect for intimidation, terrible for actual combat. No flexibility, no individual initiative. They're set up to look overwhelming, not to fight a real battle. General An presented her intelligence analysis. We've identified a critical weakness. Their ships are powerful but standardized. Every vessel appears identical in design and capability. They show no signs of technological advancement or tactical innovation. Because they haven't needed to innovate, Song realized. When every species surrenders immediately, why would you need to improve your military technology? Dr. Lim brought up holographic displays of the Vorthak ships. Their weapons are impressive but ancient in design. Energy output suggests they could definitely destroy our ships in direct combat. But their targeting systems appear slow and their formations rigid. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity was facing an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds without ever learning how to actually fight a war. So what do we do? Asked Captain Lee. Song looked around the room at his officers. We do what humans do best. We fight. The first battle began 12 hours later when negotiations finally broke down. Admiral Ketvar had grown increasingly agitated as the humans continued asking questions about military tactics, combat experience, and strategic doctrine. When Song formally refused to surrender, the aliens' response was immediate and predictable. You will be destroyed, Ketvar announced. The Empire shows no mercy to those who choose death over service. The Vorthak fleet moved with mechanical precision, forming a perfect sphere around the human ships. Their weapons charged with visible energy discharges that lit up space like purple lightning. It was an impressive display designed to terrify enemies into last-minute surrender. Instead, the human fleet did something the Vorthak had never seen. The ships scattered in all directions with no apparent pattern, breaking formation and moving independently. Some ships accelerated directly toward the alien fleet while others veered away at sharp angles. Admiral Ketvar's confusion was evident in his communications. Human ships, maintain formation for orderly destruction. Your chaotic movement serves no purpose. Song smiled grimly as he watched his tactical display. That's where you're wrong, Admiral. Chaos is something we understand very well. The human ships moved like a school of fish avoiding a predator, but with deadly purpose. Captain Lee's Taeguk dove under the alien formation while the cruiser Busan swept around the flank. The destroyer Incheon made a suicide run directly at a Vorthak dreadnought, drawing fire from multiple ships. What happened next broke 3,000 years of Vorthak military doctrine. The human ships began working together in ways the aliens couldn't predict or counter. When the Incheon was overwhelmed by enemy fire, 2 other destroyers moved to cover its retreat while a heavy cruiser flanked the attacking Vorthak ships. Dr. Park, monitoring communications from the science station, reported something extraordinary. Admiral, the Vorthak ships are requesting orders for every tactical decision. They have no individual initiative at all. Their command structure is completely centralized, General An observed. Every ship waits for instructions from Admiral Ketvar before acting. Song saw the opportunity immediately. All ships, concentrate fire on the Vorthak flagship. If we can disrupt their command structure, their entire fleet will be paralyzed. The human fleet converged on Ketvar's massive command ship with desperate fury. The alien vessel's shields were powerful, but they hadn't been designed to handle concentrated fire from multiple directions simultaneously. More importantly, the Vorthak had no experience with coordinated attacks. Engineer Choi Minho made the decisive move. His ship, the Taeguk, was heavily damaged and losing power when he detected a weakness in the alien flagship's shield array. Without waiting for orders, he diverted all remaining power to engines and rammed the Vorthak ship at full speed. The explosion tore through both vessels, but the damage to the Vorthak command ship was catastrophic. Admiral Ketvar's final transmission was filled with something the Empire had never experienced. Genuine fear. Impossible. The alien's voice crackled through static. Species do not sacrifice themselves for others. Individual preservation is the highest priority. Not for humans, Song replied as he watched the alien flagship break apart. We fight for each other. With their command ship destroyed, the Vorthak fleet fell into complete confusion. Ships collided with each other as they waited for orders that would never come. Some vessels began firing randomly while others simply stopped moving entirely. The human fleet was devastated. 43 of 50 ships were destroyed or crippled. Thousands of brave souls had died in humanity's first interstellar battle, but they had achieved something impossible. They had defeated a Vorthak fleet. Admiral Song stood in the ruins of his flagship's bridge, looking out at the debris field that marked humanity's introduction to galactic politics. Emergency lights cast strange shadows as his surviving crew worked to keep life support functioning. Communications, he ordered. Broadcast this message on all frequencies. Maximum power. Bai Yun-jung, working from a damaged console, nodded. Ready, sir? Song's voice carried across space to every listening device in the sector. This is Admiral Song Ji-hoon of the Earth Defense Fleet. We are humanity, a new species from the world called Earth. Today we fought our first battle against the Vorthak Empire. We lost most of our ships and many of our people, but we did not surrender and we did not run. He paused, looking at the faces of his surviving crew. 6 months after the first battle, the Vorthak Empire mobilized the largest military force in galactic history. 10,000 ships from across their conquered territories converged on human space, led by Sector Commander Vex Thol aboard the massive fortress ship Inevitable Dominion. The Empire had decided that humanity represented an existential threat to their 3,000-year reign. Colonel Baek In-soo crouched in the maintenance tunnels of a Vorthak supply depot, listening to alien voices through the thin metal walls. His special operations team had spent 3 weeks infiltrating this facility, deep in enemy territory. The humans had learned something the Vorthak never expected. Instead of waiting to be attacked, they were taking the fight to the enemy. Target acquired, whispered Sergeant Cho Hae-jin through the comm system. Command node is in the next section. Beck made hand signals to his team. Unlike the Vorthak, humans had learned to operate without constant communication. Each soldier could think and act independently while working toward a common goal. It was a concept the hive-minded aliens couldn't understand or counter. The team moved silently through the depot's corridors. Dr. Han Yu-jin had discovered that Vorthak facilities all followed identical designs, making infiltration easier once you learned the patterns. More importantly, she had found the biological weakness that would change everything. Meanwhile, Captain Oh Min-jung guided her stealth ship Silent Arrow through the asteroid field surrounding the depot. Human technology had advanced dramatically in 6 months of desperate warfare. The ship's adaptive camouflage made it nearly invisible, while its quantum torpedoes could punch through Vorthak shields like paper. Colonel. Oh's voice crackled. Through Beck's earpiece, enemy patrol incoming. 2 minutes to your position. Beck signaled his team to freeze. The patrol passed by their hiding spot, alien voices discussing supply schedules in their mechanical translation voices. When the sounds faded, the team resumed movement toward their target. The command node was the heart of the depot's operations. Destroying it would cripple Vorthak logistics across 3 star systems, but Beck had a different mission today. Instead of destroying the node, they were going to capture it. Dr. Han had made a discovery that terrified the Vorthak leadership. The aliens' hive mind operated through biological quantum entanglement. Their thoughts were literally connected across vast distances. But this connection worked both ways. If humans could access one command node, they could potentially disrupt the entire network. The node chamber was protected by automated defenses that the humans had learned to bypass. Vorthak security was powerful but predictable, designed to stop frontal assaults rather than infiltration. They had never needed to defend against enemies who thought creatively. In position, Beck reported as his team surrounded the command chamber. Inside the chamber, 3 Vorthak operators sat motionless at control interfaces, their minds linked to the greater network. They couldn't react to threats they couldn't perceive through their limited sensory equipment. The operation took exactly 4 minutes. Beck's team eliminated the guards, secured the chamber, and activated Dr. Han's experimental device. The quantum disruptor sent chaotic signals through the Vorthak command network, causing confusion and system failures across their fleet. Package delivered, Beck reported. Time to go. The team's extraction was where human innovation truly shined. Instead of fighting their way out, they simply walked through the depot's main corridors wearing captured Vorthak armor. The aliens were so focused on their hive-mind communications that they rarely looked at each other directly. Individual recognition was not a skill they had developed. Captain O picked up the team at the depot's landing bay, her ship still invisible to Vorthak sensors. As they escaped, explosions began rocking the facility. The quantum disruptor had caused a cascade failure in the depot's power systems. But the real damage was psychological. Across the Vorthak fleet, ship commanders reported system malfunctions, navigation errors, and communication breakdowns. For the first time in their history, they were experiencing technological failure that they couldn't explain or fix. Dr. Park, now director of xenobiology at Earth's new military research facility, was analyzing captured Vorthak technology when the report came in. The special operations mission had succeeded beyond their wildest hopes. The disruption affected over 200 ships, she explained to the assembled military leadership. Their hive mind dependency makes them incredibly vulnerable to system interference. Admiral Lee, promoted after his heroic survival of the first battle, studied the tactical reports. How long before they adapt to our attacks? That's the beautiful part, Dr. Park replied with a grim smile. They can't adapt. Their entire species has evolved around collective thinking. Individual problem-solving is literally beyond their capability. The war had transformed from a defensive struggle to an active hunt. Human ships no longer waited for the Vorthak to attack. They struck supply lines, communication relays, and isolated ships with ruthless efficiency. Each victory taught them more about their enemy's weaknesses. General Ahn had taken command of Earth's intelligence operations, coordinating a network of spies and saboteurs across Vorthak space. Her agents, mostly human volunteers who had learned alien languages and customs, moved freely through the Empire's territory. The most shocking discovery came from Agent Ro Seo-jun, who had infiltrated a Vorthak administrative center. His report changed everything humanity thought they knew about the Empire. The conquered species aren't loyal to the Vorthak, Ro transmitted through encrypted channels. They're terrified. Their compliance is based entirely on fear of retaliation. Dr. Park received the intelligence report while studying Vorthak psychological profiles. The implications were staggering. If the subjugated species knew the Vorthak could be defeated, they might rebel. That's exactly what we're going to do, Admiral Lee declared during the next strategy meeting. We're going to show the galaxy that the Empire can bleed. The plan was audacious beyond measure. Instead of focusing on military targets, humanity would attack the symbols of Vorthak power. They would broadcast evidence of their victories to every conquered world, proving that resistance was possible. Captain O led a squadron of stealth ships to the Empire's regional capital, a massive space station orbiting the conquered world of Kethmar. The station served as both the administrative center and a symbol of Vorthak dominance over 17 star systems. The attack came at the height of the station's daily operations. Human ships appeared from nowhere, their adaptive camouflage dropping as they opened fire on the station's defensive platforms. The assault was carefully planned to create maximum spectacle while avoiding civilian casualties. Dr. Lim had developed new quantum weapons specifically for this mission. Instead of simply destroying targets, they created brilliant energy discharges, visible across the entire system. Every ship, station, and planetary settlement could see the human fleet attacking the heart of Vorthak power. The station's defenses were formidable, but they had been designed to repel massive fleets, not small, groups of highly maneuverable ships. Human pilots flew their vessels with individual skill and creativity that the automated Vorthak systems couldn't predict or counter. Broadcasting on all frequencies, reported communications officer Kim Min-jun from the lead ship. Every species in the sector is receiving our transmission. The message was simple but revolutionary. Admiral Lee's voice carried across space to millions of oppressed beings. This is humanity. We are fighting the Vorthak Empire. They are not invincible. They can be defeated. Resistance is possible. The attack lasted only 2 hours, but its effects would last for centuries. As the human ships vanished back into stealth mode, the damaged station burned like a beacon visible throughout the system. For the first time in 3,000 years, a symbol of Vorthak power had been successfully attacked. On conquered worlds across the sector, alien species gathered around communication devices, listening to the impossible message. Some wept with joy they had forgotten they could feel. Others began making secret plans. All of them started to hope. The Vorthak response was swift and brutal. Sector Commander Vexthol ordered immediate retaliation against any world showing signs of unrest. Orbital bombardments destroyed cities suspected of harboring rebel sympathies. Mass executions were carried out on a dozen planets, but the damage was already done. The illusion of Vorthak invincibility had been shattered. Across their empire, conquered species began to whisper about the humans who refused to surrender. Underground resistance movements started forming on worlds that had been peaceful for centuries. Dr. Park monitored communications intercepts from across Vorthak space. "They're losing control," she reported to Earth's leadership. "Fear was their only tool for maintaining order, and we've shown that fear is unjustified." The war was entering a new phase. Humanity had learned that they weren't just fighting for their own survival. They were fighting for the freedom of every species the Vorthak had conquered. The weight of that responsibility was enormous, but so was the opportunity. Admiral Lee stood in the war room, looking at star charts that showed Vorthak fleet movements. Enemy forces were converging on human space from every direction. President Kang Mi-young stood before the emergency session of Earth's Global Council, her face grave as she prepared to make the most difficult decision in human history. Intelligence reports covered the table before her, each one painting a picture of an approaching catastrophe that dwarfed anything humanity had ever faced. The Vorthak Great Fleet consists of 100,000 ships, General An reported to the assembled delegates. This represents the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Every available vessel from across their empire is converging on our sector. Professor Shin Woo-bin, Earth's leading military historian, had spent months studying the enemy's approach. "They're not just coming to conquer us," he explained. "They're coming to make an example. They want to demonstrate to the entire galaxy what happens to species that resist." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth's total fleet numbered fewer than 3,000 ships, including converted civilian vessels and experimental prototypes. By any measure, the coming battle would be a massacre. "What are our options?" President Kang asked. Admiral Lee stepped forward, his expression determined despite the impossible odds. "We fight. We've learned that the Vorthak have weaknesses. Their technology is advanced but stagnant. Their tactics are rigid. Their command structure is centralized. We can exploit these vulnerabilities." "Against 100,000 ships?" Council Member Yoon asked skeptically. "Numbers aren't everything," Dr. Lim interjected. "Our quantum weapons have proven effective against their shields. Our adaptive AI systems can counter their automated defenses. Most importantly, our people can think and act independently while theirs cannot." Agent Rowe, recently returned from deep cover within the Vorthak Empire, provided the most crucial intelligence. "The subjugated species are watching this conflict closely. If we can inflict significant damage on the Great Fleet, it could trigger simultaneous rebellions across their territory." President Kang looked around the room at Earth's leadership. These were the people who would decide humanity's fate, and possibly the fate of countless alien civilizations. The weight of that responsibility was crushing. "There's something else we need to consider," she said quietly. "Professor Shin has developed a strategy that could break the Vorthak Empire completely, but the cost would be enormous." Shin activated a holographic display showing Vorthak infrastructure across the galaxy. "We've identified critical command centers, supply hubs, and communication relays throughout their territory. If we could coordinate simultaneous strikes on these targets, we could cripple their ability to maintain control over their conquered worlds." "What would that require?" Admiral Lee asked. "Deep strike missions behind enemy lines while the Great Fleet is engaged here," Shin explained. "Small teams of volunteers operating with no support and no hope of extraction. Most of them would never come home." The room erupted in discussion as delegates debated the merits and costs of such a strategy. Some argued it was military suicide. Others claimed it was the only chance for galactic freedom. President Kang raised her hand for silence. "The decision is mine to make. We will proceed with Professor Shin's plan. May history forgive us if we're wrong." 3 months later, Earth itself had been transformed into the largest weapons platform in human history. The moon bristled with railgun batteries capable of accelerating projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. Orbital stations housed Dr. Lim's most advanced quantum torpedo launchers. The asteroid belt had been seeded with millions of self-replicating hunter-killer drones. Captain O commanded a new class of stealth ship designed specifically for long-range infiltration missions. Her vessel, the Shadow of Earth, was equipped with experimental technology that made it invisible to Vorthak sensors, while carrying enough firepower to destroy targets far behind enemy lines. Final mission briefing, Admiral Lee announced to the assembled strike team commanders. You have 3 objectives: destroy critical infrastructure, document your actions for broadcast to conquered species, and survive if possible. Colonel Bayek led the largest strike team, targeting the Empire's central command complex in the galactic core. Dr. Han had developed specialized biological weapons designed to disrupt Vorthak hive mind communications. These weapons would only affect the aliens, leaving conquered species unharmed. The infiltration teams launched in complete secrecy while the Great Fleet was still 3 weeks away from Earth. Their ships scattered across the galaxy, each heading for targets that could cripple Vorthak control over entire sectors. Meanwhile, Earth's defenses prepared for the largest battle in galactic history. Every human ship that could fly was incorporated into the defense fleet. Civilian vessels were armed with whatever weapons could be mounted on their hulls. Even personal spacecraft carried modified mining charges that could damage enemy ships. Dr. Park had made one final discovery that changed everything. The Vorthak hive mind has a critical flaw, she explained to the Defense Council. If we can overload their quantum communication network with chaotic signals, their entire command structure will collapse. How do we generate that kind of interference? Admiral Lee asked. We sacrifice Earth's entire quantum communication grid, Dr. Lim replied grimly. Every transmitter, every relay, every communication satellite. We overload them all simultaneously and channel the energy into one massive pulse. The plan was desperate beyond measure. Success would leave humanity isolated from their colonies for years. Failure would mean extinction. But it was their only chance to level the playing field against impossible odds. Supreme Overlord Thekmor arrived at the edge of the solar system aboard his flagship Eternal Dominion, a vessel larger than some moons. His fleet stretched across space for millions of kilometers, blotting out stars with their sheer numbers. No force in galactic history had ever faced such overwhelming power. Humans. His voice boomed across all communication frequencies. You have caused unprecedented damage to the Empire. Your resistance ends now. Surrender unconditionally and your deaths will be swift. Continue fighting, and we will make your species suffer for 10,000 years. Admiral Lee responded from his flagship, the rebuilt Taeguk. Supreme Overlord, you still don't understand what you're dealing with. We told you before. We don't surrender, and we don't run. Today you're going to learn why. The battle began at the edge of the asteroid belt, where Earth's automated defenses engaged the Vorthak advance guard. Millions of hunter-killer drones swarmed the enemy ships like angry insects. Each drone was small and fragile, but they attacked, with coordination that confused the alien formations. Vorthak ships began taking casualties before they could even identify targets. The drones moved in patterns that seemed random, but were actually directed by advanced AI systems that learned and adapted in real time. For every drone destroyed, the survivors became more effective. Impossible, Thekmor's communications officer reported. Their defense systems are adapting faster than we can counter them. Irrelevant, the Supreme Overlord replied. Numbers will prevail. All ships advance to maximum engagement range. The Great Fleet pushed through the drone swarms, accepting heavy casualties to reach Earth's main defensive line. Here they encountered something unprecedented, a planet that fought back. Earth's moon had been converted into a massive artillery platform. Railgun batteries fired projectiles at relativistic speeds, each shot carrying the kinetic energy of nuclear weapons. The projectiles moved too fast for Vorthak point defenses to intercept, punching through shields and armor like they were paper. Orbital stations launched waves of quantum torpedoes that phased in and out of normal space, making them impossible to track until they detonated inside enemy ships. The torpedoes had been programmed with individual targeting AI that allowed them to select the most critical targets automatically. But the most devastating surprise was Earth itself. Dr. Lim had turned the planet's entire surface into a sensor array, capable of tracking every ship in the solar system simultaneously. This information was fed to the defense fleet in real time, allowing human ships to coordinate attacks with impossible precision. The battle raged for 3 days. Earth's orbital defenses were gradually overwhelmed by sheer numbers, but they had inflicted catastrophic damage on the Great Fleet. 50,000 Vorthak ships had been destroyed or crippled, losses that shocked the Empire to its core. On the third day, with Earth's defenses nearly exhausted, Admiral Lee gave the order that changed galactic history. All stations, execute quantum pulse protocol. Across Earth's surface, every communication array activated simultaneously. The planet's entire technological infrastructure channeled its energy into one massive pulse of chaotic quantum information. The pulse raced outward at light speed, carrying enough disruptive energy to overload every Vorthak communication system in the solar system. The effect was immediate and devastating. Vorthak ships began colliding with each other as their hive mind network collapsed. Commanders who had never made independent decisions found themselves unable to function without central coordination. The mighty Great Fleet became a mob of confused vessels drifting helplessly through space. Supreme Overlord. Thekmore's flagship was one of the few ships with enough shielding to resist the quantum pulse. 5 years after the fall of the Vorthak Empire, Emperor John Hyuk-jin stood on the observation deck of the Galactic Cooperative Headquarters, watching ships from 43 different species arrive for the annual Freedom Assembly. The massive space station orbited the neutral world of Haven, built from the wreckage of the Vorthak Great Fleet as a symbol of liberation. The transformation of the galaxy had been neither quick nor easy. When the Empire collapsed, billions of beings found themselves free for the first time in generations. Some worlds celebrated, others descended into chaos, and many simply waited to see what new masters would claim them. Ambassador Park Jin-woo approached with the latest reports from across the galaxy. The Crystalline Collective has officially joined the cooperative, he announced. That brings our membership to 41 species, with 12 more considering application. John nodded, still amazed by the responsibility that had fallen to humanity. They had never intended to become galactic leaders. All they had wanted was to survive and maintain their freedom. But liberation created its own obligations. The early years had been the most difficult. Many species expected humans to simply replace the Vorthak as galactic rulers. When Earth declined to establish an empire, confusion and disappointment followed. Some worlds begged for human protection, while others prepared for human conquest. That never came. The Zephyrian delegation wants to discuss trade agreements, Park continued, and the former Vorthak worlds are requesting assistance with infrastructure reconstruction. General Moon Sora, commander of the Free Species Liberation Forces, joined them at the observation window. Her fleet patrolled the galaxy's dangerous regions, protecting newly freed worlds from pirates and warlords who had emerged in the Empire's collapse. "Status report from the Outer Rim," she announced. "The hegemony's advance has been stopped at the Krixar system. Local defense forces performed excellently once we provided tactical training. The hegemony was a new threat that had emerged from the galactic core, attempting to fill the power vacuum left by the Vorthak collapse. Led by a species called the Dominators, they used advanced technology and ruthless tactics to conquer weakened worlds. But they had made the same mistake as the Vorthak. They underestimated the power of free beings fighting for their homes. Dr. Park, now Director of Galactic Sciences, had spent years studying the psychological impact of the Empire's fall. Her research stations monitored dozens of species as they adjusted to freedom and self-determination. "The liberation process is accelerating," she reported during the daily briefing. "Former slave worlds are developing their own defensive capabilities much faster than we projected. The Vorthak's oppression actually preserved many species' natural fighting instincts." Admiral Lee, elder statesman of the cooperative and hero of the first battle, had become something of a living legend throughout the galaxy. His presence at diplomatic negotiations often meant the difference between success and failure. The most interesting development, Dr. Park continued, is among the Vorthak themselves. The survivors who escaped the homeworld's destruction are beginning to develop individual personalities. Separation from the hive mind is forcing them to think as individuals for the first time in their species' history. This was perhaps the most unexpected outcome of the war. When the hive mind network collapsed, surviving Vorthak found themselves alone in their own heads for the first time in millions of years. Many had gone insane from the isolation, but others began to develop something their species had never known: personal identity. A group of reformed Vorthak had even requested membership in the Galactic Cooperative, led by former Admiral Ketvar, who had been permanently changed by his exposure to human thinking. They wanted to make amends for their species' crimes. The irony, observed Professor Shin during a philosophy lecture at the Cooperative University, is that we freed the Vorthak from their own oppression. They were slaves to their hive mind, just as much as their victims were slaves to the Empire. The university was another human innovation that had spread throughout the galaxy, built on the principle that knowledge should be freely shared among all species. It had become a center for interspecies cooperation and understanding. Captain O, now Admiral of the Stealth Fleet, oversaw the most sensitive missions of the New Order. Her ships monitored the galaxy's dark corners, searching for threats that might emerge to challenge the fragile peace. Intelligence reports indicate 3 more species have achieved faster-than-light travel, she briefed the Cooperative Council. All show signs of peaceful intentions, but were maintaining observation protocols. The discovery of new spacefaring species had become routine. The galaxy was vast, and many civilizations had been hidden from the Vorthak during their reign of terror. Each new contact brought opportunities and challenges. The most successful first contacts involved human diplomats working alongside representatives from species similar to the newcomers. Humanity had learned that their direct approach didn't work with all cultures, but their willingness to fight for others' freedom was universally respected. Colonel Bayek, now General of Special Operations, led training programs for newly freed worlds. His teams taught former slaves how to defend themselves against pirates, warlords, and potential new empires. The key lesson, he explained to a class of alien military officers, is that freedom requires constant vigilance. Liberty isn't something you achieve once and then forget about. It must be defended every day by every generation. His students came from dozens of species, all united by their determination to prevent another Vorthak empire from arising. They learned human tactical doctrine, but more importantly, they learned the human philosophy of individual responsibility within collective action. The cooperative itself had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a true alliance of equals. Unlike the old empire's enforced unity, the cooperative allowed each species to maintain their unique culture and government while participating in collective defense and mutual aid. Disputes were resolved through negotiation and compromise rather than force. Economic cooperation replaced tribute and exploitation. Scientific knowledge was shared freely instead of being hoarded by the ruling class. But the system wasn't perfect. Some species chafed at the democratic process, preferring the certainty of authoritarian rule. Others struggled with the responsibility that freedom brought. A few had even requested readmission to the reformed Vorthak territories. Democracy is messy, President Kang had often said during the early years, but it's better than the alternatives. Her successor, Emperor Xian, had been elected by humanity specifically to represent them in galactic affairs. The title was ceremonial. Real power remained with Earth's democratic institutions. But other species needed someone to negotiate with who could speak for all humans. The greatest challenge had come from humanity itself. After achieving galactic liberation, many humans wanted to return to their peaceful expansion among the stars. They had never asked to become galactic peacekeepers, but events had forced the issue. When the hegemony began conquering former Vorthak worlds, newly freed species turned to humanity for help. When pirates raided trade routes, merchants begged for human protection. When disputes arose between species, all sides requested human mediation. We could have said no, Admiral Lee reflected during a private conversation with Emperor John. We could have gone back to our little corner of the galaxy and minded our own business. But that's not who we are, John replied. When we see suffering, we can prevent, we act. When we see injustice, we can correct, we fight. It's what makes us human. The philosophy had become the unofficial motto of the Galactic Cooperative. When someone needs help, we answer. The final battle against the hegemony took place at the edge of the galactic spiral arm, where human Admiral Song's grandson led a combined fleet of 37 species against the would-be conquerors. The battle lasted 6 days and ended with the hegemony's complete surrender. But unlike the Vorthak, the dominators were offered rehabilitation instead of destruction. Their leaders were tried for war crimes, but their people were given the chance to join galactic civilization as equals. Some human hardliners protested this mercy, arguing that dangerous species should be eliminated. But Emperor Jian made a speech that defined humanity's approach to galactic leadership. We fight to defend freedom, not to destroy enemies. We defeat evil systems, not evil species. Every being deserves the chance to choose between tyranny and liberty. Dr. Han, now in her 70s, had dedicated her final years to helping former Vorthak develop individual identities. Her research centers on dozens of worlds worked with ex-hive mind individuals, teaching them concepts like personal choice, individual responsibility, and emotional expression. They're like children in many ways, she explained to a gathering of xenopsychologists. They have the intellectual capacity of adults but the emotional development of very young beings. With patience and guidance, they can learn to be free. Some of her most successful patients had become advocates for Vorthak rehabilitation. Former warriors learned to use their natural strength for construction instead of conquest. Ex-administrators became teachers and counselors for other recovering Vorthak.